October 26th, 2025, 1 p.m. U.S. time. In the Caribbean, the line had just been crossed. Two Venezuelan Su-30 fighter jets moved into a danger zone. From their pylons, 4 KH-31 missiles were launched toward a single target. The USS Thomas Hudner, a U.S. Navy destroyer, often described as a $2 billion floating fortress. This was no training scenario. It was a tense 20-minute chain of events that would show whether one of the world's most advanced naval defense systems could withstand a highly coordinated strike. The story, however, did not begin with the sound of engines over the sea. It began far above the planet. Nearly 350 kilometers above Earth, in the darkness of orbit, a KH-11 reconnaissance satellite watched every movement below. From space, it monitored activity at Venezuela's La Orchila airbase. The images it transmitted were more than routine surveillance. They revealed two Su-30 Mk-2 flanker fighters preparing for flight, each carrying KH-31 supersonic anti-ship missiles beneath its wings. With powerful AL-31FP engines and exceptional maneuverability, the Su-30 is among the most capable 4.5 generation fighters built by Russia. And the weapons they carried sent a message that could not be ignored. For the outside world, the Caribbean is a region where tension can rise without warning. Venezuela, seeking to project strength and challenge the American presence, appeared ready to make a dangerous move. The plan seemed straightforward, a sudden strike designed to embarrass a global naval power. On a map, the line between Venezuelan territorial waters and international waters may look thin. But on that day, the two Su-30s were not flying alongside it. They were flying straight toward it, pushing the situation toward a direct test. On the other side, the USS Thomas Hudner was conducting a freedom of navigation patrol in international waters. An Arleigh Burke-class destroyer is far more than a warship made of steel. It is a mobile command post, a heavily armed platform, and above all, a vessel protected by the Aegis combat system, widely considered one of the most advanced naval defense networks in the world. Its mission that day was routine. Help ensure open access to international sea lanes. But routine does not mean unprepared. The U.S. Navy had already built the bigger picture. Roughly 500 kilometers away, an E-2D Hawkeye airborne early warning aircraft was circling overhead. With its large radar dome rotating above the fuselage, it acted as the fleet's eye in the sky, feeding the destroyer a constant stream of data. At 1410, the Hawkeye detected the takeoff of the two Su-30s. It tracked their heading, altitude, and likely weapons load long before the destroyer's own radar had full visual confirmation. From the moment those jets left the runway to the moment they became an immediate threat, only 20 minutes passed. For Venezuela, that window may have looked like an opportunity. In reality, they were moving deeper into a trap they did not realize had already formed around them. Inside the Combat Information Center of the Hudner, the mood was calm, focused, and razor-sharp. This was the ship's brain. The AN/S PY-1DV radar swept the sky continuously, building a live three-dimensional picture of everything around the vessel. Soon, two fast-moving contacts appeared, flying low in attack formation. They did not answer radio calls. Their IFF transponders remained silent. At the same time, the SLQ-32 electronic warfare suite began analyzing their emissions. Seconds later, the combat information officer made the call. Identity confirmed. Two Venezuelan Su-30S, armed with KH-31P missiles. Those missiles were no ordinary threat. Designed specifically to challenge heavily defended warships, the KH-31 can fly at around Mach 3.5 and skim close to the sea, making detection and interception far more difficult. The two Su-30S were no longer simply approaching. They were changing radar modes and preparing to lock onto the destroyer. The situation had moved beyond posturing. This was now a real-world confrontation. Then it happened. The warning came through the ship's systems. Vampire inbound. On the tactical displays, two missiles had separated from the aircraft and were accelerating rapidly toward the ship. Each one was nearly 5 meters long, packed with fuel and a destructive payload, and moving at roughly 1,200 meters per second. Venezuela had crossed the threshold. What they believed was a surprise move was already being read and predicted by Aegis before the launch was complete. And now, the real contest began. Not just between nations, but between sensors, software, timing, and physics. As the first two KH-31s passed the 50-kilometer mark, the ship activated its most subtle layer of defense. The SLQ-32 system went to work. It did not use conventional firepower. Instead, it detected the missile's radar seeker signals, manipulated them, and sent altered returns back, attempting to convince the missiles that the ship was somewhere else. At the same moment, the order came to deploy decoys. the Mark 36 SRBOC system fired, launching a cloud of radar-reflective material and heat-producing countermeasures into the air. The goal was simple: hide the real ship inside a field of false targets. The effect was immediate. One of the incoming KH-31s took the bait. It shifted course toward the decoys and plunged into the false target zone before falling into the sea well short of the destroyer. The first threat had been neutralized without a single live interceptor being used, but the second missile pushed through. Whether because of stronger programming or a cleaner track, it was not fully fooled. The jamming still affected it, forcing it to waste energy and reducing its efficiency, but it remained on course. Electronic warfare had done part of the job. Now the next layer had to take over. The missile was down to 30 kilometers and still moving at Mach 3.5. Time to impact had dropped below 25 seconds. The tactical action officer gave the order: launch SM-6. On the forward deck, a missile cell of the Mark 41 vertical launch system opened, and a Standard Missile 6 erupted skyward. Worth roughly $4 million, the SM-6 is a precision interceptor designed for exactly this kind of moment. It climbed high, then turned sharply downward in a steep, high-speed descent toward its target. This was no chase. It was a direct meeting of two supersonic systems on converging paths. At around 20 kilometers from the ship, the SM-6 found the KH-31 and struck it. A bright mid-air blast followed, and both missile and target disappeared into a fast-expanding cloud of smoke and debris. In that instant, a single interceptor had protected a warship valued in the billions and the lives of roughly 300 sailors aboard. For a moment, it looked as though the attack had ended, but the engagement was not over. Exploiting the confusion created by the first sequence, electronic jamming, the interceptor launch, and the explosion itself, the two Su-30S executed a second move. They fired two more Ka-31s, using the chaos of the initial exchange as cover. This second pair slipped past the long-range engagement window. They were now too close for another SM-6 shot and only 15 kilometers away. Impact time was now under 12 seconds. There was no room for delay. The next layer stepped in, the Evolved Sea Sparrow Missile, or ESSM. More hatches opened in the vertical launch system, but this time the setup was different. Instead of one large interceptor per cell, each cell held 4 ESSMs. This was short to medium-range defense built for dense, rapid response. 4 ESSMs launched almost at once, their smoke trails curving upward in quick arcs. The ESSM is built for speed and agility. Capable of around Mach 4 and extreme maneuvering, it behaves less like a traditional missile and more like a compact, highly agile interceptor. Guided by shipboard updates and terminal tracking, the missiles raced toward the incoming threats. One ESSM locked onto the third KH-31 and corrected course in fractions of a second to match the target's evasive movement. The intercept was clean and immediate, ending that threat in a sharp blast. Another ESSM struck the fourth KH-31 as well. This hit damaged the missile severely, knocking out its seeker and guidance system. But the target did not completely break apart. What remained was no longer a guided weapon, but it was still a fast-moving 500-kilogram mass of metal heading toward the ship. Now it was only 5 kilometers away, 5 seconds, 4 seconds, 3 seconds. The final line of defense came alive, the Close-In Weapon System, or CIWS. This was the last shield, the steel wall at point-blank range. Its own radar locked onto the incoming object. In a split second, its fire control computer calculated the solution. Then the 6-barrel M61 Vulcan Gatling gun began firing at full rate. The sound is unlike anything else, a dense mechanical roar as the system unleashes 20mm tungsten rounds at up to 4,500 rounds per minute. These are not explosive shells. They are solid, armor-piercing projectiles designed to tear through anything that enters the engagement zone. In seconds, the incoming mass was shredded into smaller and smaller fragments, which splashed harmlessly into the sea hundreds of meters from the destroyer. Then came silence. Inside the Combat Information Center, the tactical display that moments earlier had been crowded with warning symbols, tracks, and intercept paths was now clear. 4 advanced Russian-made anti-ship missiles, launched in a coordinated strike, had been reduced to debris in the Caribbean. The 2 Su-30S broke away and returned to base. From the detection of the first missile to the neutralization of the final fragment, the full defensive chain had taken less than 90 seconds. The USS Thomas Hudner remained untouched. This was more than a successful defense. It was a message. To Caracas and to anyone else watching, the conclusion was unmistakable. Challenging a U.S. Navy destroyer in international waters is not just risky. It is an invitation to overwhelming failure. Superior technology, backed by relentless training, had formed a defensive wall that proved extremely difficult to break. The sailors aboard the Hudner did not perform heroics in the cinematic sense. They simply did their jobs with the kind of precision that only comes from thousands of hours of drills, simulation, and disciplined preparation. As the destroyer continued its patrol, the Caribbean returned to calm. What had just happened was not merely a tense encounter. It was a real test of modern layered naval defense, and the result could hardly have been clearer. In today's battle space, the deciding factor is not only who fires first, but who can see first, process faster, and respond with absolute coordination. So now the question is yours. Which defensive layer stood out the most to you? The satellite surveillance, airborne early warning, electronic warfare, missile interceptors, or the CIWS at the final second? Share your thoughts in the comments. And for more deep dives into military technology and real-world defense scenarios, subscribe and turn on notifications. Thanks for watching.